Hello everyone, I'm here today on the big screen to tell you about the life and writings of Black Hawk. So let's get started. Biography section. Who was Black Hawk? Ma Kya Tia Mi Shi Kye Kyak, or Black Hawk as he is most commonly referred to, was born in 1767 in a small town of what is now western Illinois. While not born a chief, he would go on to gain the title through his bravery and actions performed in Native American combat. Black Hawk is most famous for his leadership in the battles for his homeland, now grouped into the title of the Black Hawk War. Conflicts leading up to the Black Hawk War began in 1804, when members of the Sauk tribe unknowingly signed a treaty giving up approximately 50 million acres of land that Black Hawk and his people inhabited. Upset with Americans approaching further and further into Sauk territory, Black Hawk went off to fight with the British in the War of 1812. However, even after the war, further conflicts with Americans continued, and the threat of his homeland being taken from him pushed Black Hawk to lead a band of Sauks, Fox, Kickapoo, and Winnebago warriors together in an all-out fight against American forces in what would be called the Black Hawk War of 1832. Hardly a war by 20th century standards, the natives were severely outnumbered and underpowered against the Americans, and were forced to surrender after only a few weeks of fighting. Black Hawk and his lead chiefs were taken into captivity and shipped off to be held in the Jefferson Barracks in Missouri. During his time as a captive, Black Hawk became somewhat of a twisted celebrity. While he did meet President Jackson, War Secretary Lewis Cass, and was even the subject of many artists and painters who had come to see the great war chief, it would be hard to call this a true celebrity status if you have to spend your life as a captive. He was, however, visited by the legendary Washington Irving, author of Rip Van Winkle and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. During the final days of Black Hawk's captivity, he began to dictate his life story to interpreter Antoine Leclerc. With the help of newspaper editor J.B. Patterson, From Life of Ma Kya Tia Mia Shi Kye Kyak, or Black Hawk, became one of the first Native American autobiographies to be published in the United States. Even after his release from captivity, Black Hawk continued to remain an important figure in Native American and American society. He was invited to several councils between the Sauk tribe and the American government, but ultimately he had no real power at these meetings, and nothing changed for his people. He continued to hold on to feelings of frustration and sadness of what had happened to his tribe, feelings he would never truly let go of. Black Hawk died in 1838 at the age of 70 in Davis County, Iowa. Excerpt section from the life of Black Hawk. The textbook offers a short excerpt taken out of From Life of Black Hawk. The excerpt details the events that happened over several years leading up to the Black Hawk War of 1832. To summarize, the governor of St. Louis called for the Sauk tribe to sign a peace treaty with the United States, as he claimed the president had accused him of great crimes. So Black Hawk and the Sauk chiefs went down to meet the American representatives, who threatened them with war unless a peace treaty was signed. So the Sauk tribe signed the treaty and smoked the peace pipe. Black Hawk then returned to his home to find the Americans had destroyed their village and were now inhabiting their land. Black Hawk's people struggled to get corn to grow food and were continually harassed and physically abused by the Americans, even killed in some instances. In response to this harsh treatment, Black Hawk never once retaliated, but tried to find ways to peacefully solve the problem. He met with who he thought was the governor of Illinois, Governor Cole, to find out that his term was up and Cole was no longer the governor. He kept trying to get help from the Sauk's American liaison, but it was of no use. Soon after, Black Hawk had learned that because of the signed treaty from the great chiefs, his people would be forced to move as soon as the land was sold to Americans. There is one main excerpt from Life of Black Hawk that shows us the main reason why Black Hawk took an army of Native American warriors to fight the Americans. My reason teaches me that land cannot be sold. The Great Spirit gave it to his children to live upon and cultivate as far as is necessary for their subsistence, and so long as they occupy and cultivate it, they have the right to the soil. But if they voluntarily leave it, then any other people have a right to settle upon it. Nothing can be sold but such things as can be carried away. This passage is significant because it shows how Black Hawk and the Sauk people thought of land ownership. They really didn't consider land something that could be sold or owned, and so like many Native Americans at the time, they were tricked into giving away their land. What was Black Hawk's writing style? While Black Hawk was able to dictate his life story to interpreter Antoine Leclerc, he never actually put pen to paper. The raw conversations he had with Leclerc about his life were instead written down and passed on to J.P. Patterson, who as previously stated worked as the editor for the autobiography. Unfortunately, because the work was spoken by Black Hawk, translated from Leclerc, and then finalized by Patterson, a lot of what would have been Black Hawk's unique writing style is lost in translation. There are, however, a few examples of Black Hawk's mannerisms in his writing. Referencing the president as great father and state governors as great chiefs helps keep the intent of Black Hawk's original dictation intact. While keeping word choice the same does help maintain a level of originality, we can only assume that Patterson wrote a completely honest and true translation. Originally up for debate, today most scholars do consider the work to be Black Hawk's autobiography, but the raw conversations he had with LeClaire didn't survive. So it's possible Patterson could have left out or watered down parts of Black Hawk's story that didn't fit into the narrative he wanted to tell. In closing, Black Hawk was an important historical character whose autobiography did have an effect on American literature. While he wasn't or isn't as well known as other writers from his day and age, his autobiography provides us a window into what life was like for Native Americans in the 1800s. From his early life living completely with the Sauk tribe to his time after the Black Hawk War, Black Hawk's devotion and struggle to maintain his homeland mirrors the trials faced by so many other Native Americans just trying to reclaim what we took from them. Thank you.